Alright, I'm gonna show you how to install and deploy Payload CMS since a lot of people are having problems with it. It's gonna be super hard. So on the Payload website, you see this command, which we're gonna now just use to initialize a fresh new Payload installation. So npx create payload app, that's it. Let's just name it payload test, TypeScript blank, MongoDB connection, doesn't matter for now. All right, and this is gonna take a while. All right, now let's cd into payload test and open this in VS Code. There we go, that's our payload project. First thing I wanna do is create a new file, call it Dockerfile, which we're gonna use for deployment, and paste all this in. I'll put this in the video description. Basically, this installs Alpine Linux with Node 18, does all the yarn stuff. Services here, and this is important, it exposes port 3000, which needs to be the same as the one specified in src server.ts. You see, app listens on port 3000, whatever you put here needs to be exposed in this Docker file. Now in the server.ts file, we see a bunch of environment variables, which we need to make sure to set when we deploy the project, which is payload secret and MongoDB URI. We can also find those in the .n file. And in the payload config.ts, that's where you're gonna define all your collections and whatever, really. And you also find the server URL field, which is set to localhost. Now this is important. This needs to be set to whatever domain you're accessing payload from. A lot of people make the mistake of just leaving this as localhost and then they deploy it on some custom domain. They try to open it and it just keeps loading and probably throws some error in the console. So we need to make sure to adjust that, and to do that, we're just gonna make another environment variable. Is to process.env.payload_URL. That should be fine. So we don't forget about it, we'll just add it here. And that's pretty much all we need as far as changing the base project goes. Now we can pretty much go ahead and publish it on GitHub. It's called payload test, published to private repository, that's fine. All right, it's done. Now, if we go back to our environment variables, you'll see it wants a MongoDB URI. This is set to localhost, which is fine if you want to test it out locally, but to deploy it, we need a MongoDB server. So that's what we're gonna do first. To do that, I'll use MongoDB Atlas, which is, in my opinion, probably the easiest way to do this. So let's just sign in here. Good thing is they also have a free plan if you want to just get started. Let's create a new project here, call it a payload test. Next, create project, that's fine. And it shows you here current IP address not added. We'll add current IP address, then go to network settings and click on add IP address and click on allow access from anywhere, confirm. Otherwise, wherever you want to deploy this, it's not going to be able to access your database. And usually we don't know the IP if it's some fancy service like Northflank, for example. Then we're going to click on build a database. We'll choose the free one here. I'll go for Europe since it's closer to me, and create. Now a username and password, doesn't matter. We can auto generate a password, copy it, username Alessio, and create user. I'll put the password here so I don't forget about it. Now, where would you like to connect from? We'll use cloud environment. You see, this is the allow access from anywhere IP we added, so that's good. And we click on finish and close. Yeah, and now we can click on connect and click on connect your application and what we need, this connection string. Now I'm gonna show you how to deploy payload first using Northflank, which is a pretty cool service. So in Northflank, you can click on create new service, build and deploy Git repo. That's fine since we just published our payload project to GitHub. We'll call this payload test repository. We're gonna select payload test, which is the one we just published. Build options Dockerfile, that's where we created it. There's also this build pack, but I never used that. This looks fine. Now this is the important part, the environment variables. First ones we're gonna add is node env equals production everywhere for build and runtime. I don't know if you actually need this build stuff, but I'll just do it anyways. There. And now we can go back to our project and just copy all these variables and put them in here. So MongoDB URI, we're gonna put this code here from MongoDB Atlas. And pretty much I just paste it in here. This password thing we're gonna need to replace with our password. Now payload URL for Northflank, we don't know it yet. I'm not gonna use a domain, I'll just use what Northflank gives me. So we're gonna change this later, and that's fine. Networking, well, as you remember, we used port 3000, so make sure this is exposed. Actually here, this is the public domain we're gonna use from Northflank. We're just gonna copy this and put this under payload URL. And that should pretty much work fine. Resources, I'll use this one. And we can just click on create service. And if we now go to builds, it's gonna start building our payload project, which is gonna take like usually, I think, 1.5 minutes. All right, this is finished. And now if we go on containers, we see this container it just created, and this is pretty much starting our payload instance. So we're just gonna wait until this finished. So it's starting payload, connected successfully, no errors. This we can just ignore. And it also prints out our admin URL, which is the one we specified in the server_URL environment variable. So we can just open this, and that's it. That's our payload instance. Make sure you have no errors in the console here. This doesn't matter, fav icon, we don't have that. But if you see like a loading screen, an endless loading screen or something, that means you didn't do this server URL environment variable correctly. There's a mismatch between what payload thinks you're deploying it on, what domain, and what domain you're actually using. So make sure you do that correctly, but no errors here. So we can just log in. And that's it. That's our payload instance. Our user, we can create a new one if we want to. Now, if we go back to MongoDB Atlas, this is our database. We can actually click on Browse Collections. And on here, we can see whatever payload just created for us. So payload created this users collection, and we already have a document here, which is the user we just created. So next thing we're gonna do is to deploy it on Railway, which is a different service. So in Northflank, we can just pause everything so we don't have to pay for it. And this one shouldn't work anymore yet. And let's go on Railway. It works very similar to Northflank. The difference is you pay a bit more per CPU or RAM to use, but it only uses what you actually use. In Northflank, you have your resources. You can specify which machine you want it to run on. On Railway, it runs always on a very powerful machine, but you don't pay shit if you don't actually use it. Like here, I'm paying, see, $5 a month for 512 megabytes of memory, and if I need more, I need to go here and increase it. If I need less, I'm still paying my $5 a month. Railway is a bit more expensive, but it runs on a powerful machine. If you need 8 gigabytes of RAM for like a few minutes or something, or you only access payload a few times a day, it's perfect. So definitely give this a try. And here we can click on start a new project. And we can click on deploy from GitHub repo, payload test. Before we click on deploy now, we can use add variables to add, well, the environment variables we need. First thing, obviously, node env is production, although I'm not even sure if we need it. And let's just use this raw editor, it's nicer. And we can pretty much just copy everything we just set up in Northflank into Railway, apart from payload URL. We have to do that later. Click on update variables, and that's it. Under settings, we should find our domain here. We can click on generate domain to have Railway generate some Railway domain for us. Copy that, go back to our environment variables, and put it under payload_URL. Else, as you know, it wouldn't work. Update variables, and it's going to reschedule our deployment here. Now, one thing which is special for Railway is that you also need to add a port equals 3000 environment variable. Otherwise, Railway is just gonna choose something. You know, that's how we can change that, because it's not 3000 by default. So let's click on update, and it should be deploying here. We can cancel all those Older deployments we don't need anymore. All right, and let's just wait until that's finished. All right, it's starting up. As always, Payload is printing out our admin URL right here. We can find that in our server.ts, by the way. It just does this thing, prints it out here. You can customize that if you want. All right, let's try to open it. So this is completely normal for Railway. Even though it says it's done, it just for some reason takes a little while until it's done. And we're there. We just gave it the same database we used on Northflank. So we already created our user. So we can just log in with the same user we just created. And that's it. We just deployed it on Railway, right?